The message hit while I was deep in a flooded hull. Suit sealed, lungs counting down. "Your child is dead," the operator said. As a former Marine diver, I'd heard bad news before, but those words emptied me out. I surged to the surface, gear spraying, and ran from the training pool as if the deck had become molten. Lena, our 8-year-old daughter who collected books and lined her wooden trains in careful rows, was gone. She'd been shot on our front porch by a neighbor, Corbin Hale, the condo board chair, after a dispute about a parking line. Anna, my wife, had thrown herself between them. She'd been struck, too, taking a round in the leg while shielding our child. The morning had begun with Corbin pounding on our stoop, tapping a tape measure and furious about markings. He shouted at Lena. She, small and slow to speak because of a motor disorder, tried to step away. Corbin stepped into her path. Anna ran outside when she heard Lena cry. The exchange spiraled. Anna slapped Corbin. Years of provocation seemed to break something in him, and he drew a pistol. He fired once into Lena's chest and once into Anna's thigh. Neighbors screamed for help. By the time medics arrived, Lena was fading in her mother's arms. Officers restrained Corbin. Detective Kim later told me witnesses and surveillance video indicated Corbin produced the weapon first. He was booked on charges of first-degree murder and attempted murder. I wanted immediate retribution. The old combat reflexes, focused, brutal, unquestioning, flared in my head. But there was another life to consider. Anna was carrying our second child only a few months along. My commanding officer pulled me aside and warned me not to wreck what remained of my family. The memorial was held 3 days later. A small wooden casket, a beloved storybook laid on top. My unit formed an honor guard. I had failed to protect my child. Grief became a physical vice that nearly choked me. Corbin's defense came polished and precise. His lawyer cast him as a frightened, civic-minded man and portrayed Anna as unstable, introducing medical records, therapy notes, and prescription history into the record to sow doubt. They argued Corbin had felt threatened and acted in self-defense. The prosecution presented security footage, neighbor testimony about Corbin's pattern of harassment, and a forensic pathologist's report. The autopsy concluded Lena had been shot at close range. Even so, the defense spun a narrative people wanted to accept, a neighbor driven to panic, not malice. When Mara took the stand, their attorney probed her records and turned a single slap into proof of instability. The courtroom's air pressed on my ribs. After weeks of testimony, the jury's verdict hit like a blade. He was convicted of first-degree murder and the count for the attack on my wife. They also found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter, as if killing our child could be softened into an accident. The sentence stretched for years on paper, but with parole calculations, he might serve only a fraction. I left the courthouse numb, drove until the lights blurred, and stopped at the small grave where I finally broke. For months I imagined revenge, quiet, permanent solutions, but each vision threatened Elena, the baby she carried and the family that would remain. I refused to trade one ruin for another. That refusal became work. Over 6 months, I poured fury into a foundation in our child's name, lobbying for neighborhood governance reform and testifying about how petty power can become violence. We helped pass rules limiting arbitrary board authority, requiring background checks for officers, and creating clear complaint pathways and penalties for harassment. It didn't bring our boy back, but it made the loss mean something beyond our house. Elena delivered next spring and named the baby the name we'd chosen. He has a familiar tilt to his smile and a restless curiosity that makes mornings tender and raw. Thomas died in custody after serving only a few years. I skipped any ceremony. Some people called that closure. It never felt like that to me. Grief folded itself into daily life, a quiet companion I carried everywhere. 6 years later, our younger son is lively and knows, in small ways, about the brother he never met. Elena still wakes and stares at an empty shelf where toys used to sit, and I can still see a line of wooden boats left on the curb. I learned that legal vindication rarely heals. Survival and small reforms became the imperfect justice we could claim. The system let us down when we needed it most. Still, we endured, rebuilt our lives, and worked to ensure no other family would face the devastation of losing a child over something so trivial as a line on a driveway. Somewhere, I like to believe the real Lena knows her father never stopped fighting in her memory. Part 2, The Trial and Its Aftermath, began on a frigid January morning. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, neighbors, and former Marine colleagues in dress uniforms. The prosecution laid out a clear case. Surveillance footage showing Corbin drawing first, numerous witnesses recounting his prolonged harassment, expert testimony confirming Lena posed no threat, and the medical examiner's report confirming a close-range, fatal shot to the chest. Yet the defense was adept at twisting empathy into doubt. They portrayed Corbin as a devoted community volunteer who had been threatened, insisting he carried a firearm only for protection. They combed through Anna's medical history, therapy notes, prescriptions, the immense stress of caring for a child with mobility, challenges, implying these factors made her unstable and prone to overreaction. Character witnesses described Corbin as cautious, conscientious, and fearful. The attorney's delivery was flawless, crafting a story the jurors might want to believe. Anna took the stand. She recounted the morning Lena played with her picture books, the tape measure, the confrontation, the slap, and the gun. Under cross-examination, the weight of her personal struggles was turned against her. Questions about medication, memory, and emotional control left her trembling. The defense had sown seeds of doubt, shaping the jurors' perception of a once familiar neighbor as potentially harmless. After 2 tense weeks of testimony, the case was handed to the jury. 3 days later, the jury returned its decision. Not guilty of first-degree murder. Not guilty on the other major count. Guilty, they said, of voluntary manslaughter. The courtroom shuddered. Relieved murmurs from the defense. Stunned silence from those of us who had watched a life vanish. Manslaughter. A legal middle. Ground that treated the killing like a terrible mistake, rather than a chosen act. The statute carried years on paper. With parole and credits, the sentence could shrink to something small compared with the loss we carried. I left the courthouse without a word. I drove until the city fell away, and then stopped at the cemetery and finally let myself break apart. The fury that followed felt clinical. It was a list of precise plans. Quiet ways to make a person never be seen again. Methods that left no trace. I sketched scenarios in my head like a surgeon. Each plan was clean, efficient, a dark craft. I also counted consequences. Prison would mean a father gone for the unborn child. It would mean Lena alone with a newborn and a household broken. My commander's warning returned, blunt and necessary. Protect what remains. I could not trade one wreck for another. Refusing revenge did not lessen the ache. It turned that energy into motion. Over the following 6 months, I poured everything into something outward. I started a foundation in our child's name. I pushed for rules to hold neighborhood boards to account. I testified before state panels about how petty power becomes violence. We lobbied for background checks for board officers, clearer complaint processes, and meaningful penalties for harassing behavior. It felt small against the void, but it changed things. 3 states adopted reforms we had helped draft. None of it brought our daughter back. It reshaped the system that had failed her. Anna unraveled at times. Grief and shock hollowed her. She would sit for hours, silent, in the nursery, replaying the morning. She had been pregnant when we lost our child. 4 months into Anna's pregnancy, in quiet sobs, she whispered she wanted our next child to carry Lena's name. When our son was born that March, we gave him that name. He has her bright, searching eyes. Corbin served a shortened term before dying in prison years later. I did not attend any ceremony. There was no satisfaction. The sentence never felt like justice. 6 years later, our younger son is lively and curious. Anna has good days and very hard nights. The empty bedroom, storybooks, and the lined-up wooden cars, red, blue, green, yellow, remain part of our lives. Grief didn't end. It became part of our daily rhythm. We learned to carry it and make meaning from it. Anger was human, but destroying everything would have ruined what remained. Instead, I fought differently, through advocacy, legal reform, and raising awareness so other families wouldn't suffer the same fate. That work didn't erase the nightmare, but it gave it purpose. Some nights I still catch Anna staring at the empty bed, thinking of Lena's laughter, her love for stories, and her belief that her father was a hero. Somewhere I hope she knows I never stopped fighting for her.